Okay, so this, Melinda asked, sorry, not Melinda, Anne asked me to talk a little bit about kind of who we are. My background is in epidemiology, and actually, when I did my graduate work, I wouldn't have imagined that I would be in kind of doing what I am now. But basically, this is my team here, and if we're talking about recovering from various states, I guess this is a team of recovering scientists. And we recover by studying what scientists do rather than doing science. So we have physicists, microbiologists, kind of a variety of people with a variety of backgrounds. And basically what we do is to take various sources of data. Being Clarivate Analytics, we of course use the Web of Science data. You probably know us as the producers of Scholar One abstracts and Scholar One manuscripts. But we also use Cortellis clinical trials data. We use the World Patent Index, which aggregate data from various patent authorities. And we use that to help a variety of different organizations look at the research that they're doing or the research that they are planning to do and compare that against what the rest of the world is doing and what might be opportunities for them to capitalize on, white space, but also look backwards at what they've funded and say, well, what is the impact of what you've funded and what does that compare to other organizations, and what is your return on that investment? So we spend a lot of time thinking about impact, and I'm going to give you a third definition of impact that's different from those that have been discussed. But before I get there, we're talking about impact, but why am I talking about joy and the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu? So I read this recently. It's on the New York Times bestseller list. And as I was reading it, it struck me that there are aspects that they discuss in terms of joy that are analogous to what we think about in terms of impact in the scientific or scholarly endeavors. And here, the Dalai Lama, this is a quote from the Dalai Lama, but the Archbishop also kind of echoes this sentiment, right? If you set out to be joyful, you are not going to end up being joyful, right? So we all want to be happy, but we don't get happy by saying, how happy am I? And let me just increase that. Right? And there's a lot of research, fortunately, that tell us how we can be more happy in life, right? It deals with being connected with the people who you love. It deals with finding meaning in life and feeling like you can actually act towards that, kind of contribute to that. So in terms of joy, we actually know a little bit more about how we can get there versus where we are in terms of what I'll later define for you as a research impact or the impact of scientific research, right? Nobody sets out to do low impact work. But we can't set out to do high impact work by saying I'm going to do high impact work. Whereas with joy, we have a few things that we know how to get there. We don't think we're quite there yet with the scientific endeavor and really knowing how we get there. And the thing about joy is that we're all human, and even though we have different characteristics to different societies, the fundamentals are similar because we're all human. With science, it's a little bit more difficult because we're, by definition, pushing the frontiers of knowledge. So if we look back and say, well, let's try to learn from what happened in the past and apply it to the future, there's a pretty strong and probably invalid assumption that's being made looking at the past to try and inform the future there. So what my team does is we spend a lot of time thinking about what metrics are the right ones to use. And what you see here is, I just did a Google search of logic model for program evaluation. So in our space, we do a lot of work for funders. who have a research program that they've funded over the last 5 years or 10 years or whatever it might be. And what we do is talk with them quite a bit about what are the investments that you've made, both in terms of human resources, in terms of financial contributions, and also infrastructure, various things. What are the investments that you've made? What are the things that you're doing, the activities that you're doing? And then how are those things? How do you suppose those things are resulting in outcomes and outputs, or I should say outputs and then outcomes from your research? And then actually much further after that, once you have your outputs, things like publications and patents, the impact, what impact are you having? And those impacts are typically at least 5, maybe 10, 20 years down the line. Things like public health impact, decreased disease burden in my field of epidemiology, or you think about the impact of the various technologies that go in, or the various technological advancements that go into your cell phone, for example, right? Like now everybody has one in their pocket. You can access information on demand. But to get to that point, we're kind of 10, 15 years out from when that was probably initially discovered or developed. So we think systematically about what are the inputs, the activities, the outputs, the outcomes, and therefore the impact. And for us, it's by definition much further down the line. Okay. Some of the things that we do, of course, involve quantitative data, like the Web of Science or other sources of data as well. This is an example not from work that we've done, but which is from the NIH. And what you see here, well, I guess you can't see it, but this is a timeline of the development of a rheumatoid arthritis drug. And the initial time point here is 1989 to 1991, and then you get the FDA-approved drug in 2016. So that 27-year period is typical. But usually, as a funder, you're making decisions probably not 27 years later, right? You're making decisions about, okay, this initial work was done here. Do I fund the subsequent work? How do you make those decisions? And there's various ways. So this is a retrospective look, and they've gone and put in a lot of effort to interview people and look at the data and put together this very nice schematic, one of many on the NIH website. I encourage you to go take a look. So it's a combination of quantitative data and databases combined with qualitative data talking to people, and then you get the story. What's difficult about this is, of course, that you can't really scale this up to say, well, my impact in totality of my whatever, $30 million of funding or $300 million of funding is what? This is a very particular case that you can build. But it takes quite a lot of effort. But the quantitative data and the qualitative data complement one another. And I should point out that this fundamental issue of the time, the latency is it's fundamental to what we do when it comes to evaluating the impact of research. Another issue is the granularity at which decisions are made versus the granularity at which you can make measurements of impact, right? You have at a policy level initiatives like the Cancer Moonshot, and that's cancer is very broad, or the Brain Initiative or Precision Medicine Initiative. And then here what I'm showing are RFAs from the NIH that get a little bit more granular. So you have longitudinal studies for a call for longitudinal studies for a particular disease area, or the development of particular biomarkers for a particular disease area. And that's a kind of moderate level of granularity, but then at a grant level, as an investigator, you submit a grant, and decisions about what gets funded are actually made by peer reviewers, of course, and at a very, very, very granular level, much more granular than this, right? So in some areas, investigators are, fortunately we're not there in the, I shouldn't say fortunately, we're not doing this in the US yet, where we're asking investigators to report very specifically on what the social impact of their research is. But in some other countries that is happening, and in some ways it's very, it kind of distorts the definition of impact, because if you're looking at a very granular piece of research and needing to say what the social impact of that very granular piece of research is, it's very difficult to distill from the rest of what's happening in the research ecosystem that it's sitting within. So this granularity issue, we can measure impact at a certain level, at a certain granularity, but when you try to take it up or down, it gets a little challenging. I guess my parting thought is this from one of my epidemiology professors. Not everything that is measurable is worth measuring, and not everything that is worth measuring is measurable. And I think today is particularly important as we think about, kind of everybody drowning in data that's coming in. Just because you have it doesn't mean that it's going to get you what you need.